Hey, everybody, welcome to the fourth episode of the podcast, which we are now officially naming Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Design the Everything, and this is my co-host, Harrison with Precision Ingenuity.
Good evening. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. So I was at IMTS this week, and I have lots of things to talk about, so we should do that second. Let's start with talking about what you have going on.
Okay. Well, for starters, when we get into the IMTS stuff, I'm going to be very jealous because I really wanted to go. Just didn't work out this year, but hopefully next time. For me, stuff's been going good. We had a pretty big order of 500 pieces that came through a week or two ago, and we chewed our way through all those. People are starting to find us on our gun-related items. So we had a gentleman who dropped off 6 rifles that all need to be have the barrels threaded on the ends of them. And so that is somewhat terrifying because if anything goes wrong, then we get to buy a whole bunch of barrels for guns. So, so we've been dreading and preparing for that. So we've had to buy a whole lot of equipment because apparently when they, I'm not a major gun person. Like I've always enjoyed guns and grown up with guns, but I've never really been a big person that did gunsmithing and took guns apart. But apparently taking off barrels off of the action, which is what the barrels thread into, that's what a lot of them are called, it's quite an ordeal. And so we've had to order some specialized tooling to get that done. So hopefully we'll be doing that tomorrow. So fingers crossed on that. Had some design work from a guy down in Miami, Florida. And so been kind of chewing through that with him, kind of an interesting design project. Had some local work that from someone we've done a little bit of work for, but they sent us a little bit of a larger order than they normally have, and so that's kind of exciting. And then at the last minute they wanted to rush it, so my weekend and all of today was spent running around like a chicken with its head cut off trying to get that done. So
okay,
let's see here, what else. Our laser engraving stuff has really been picking up like crazy. We actually had this guy who came in, and if you look at our Instagram, you can see it. It's really cool. He hand makes duck calls, and he heard about us through another machine shop that we did work with, and so he came out and he brought this super cool duck call, and it had this aluminum band on it. And I guess his customer who he was making it for had shot, I don't know if it was a duck or a dove or something that had a band around its foot, and he wanted that engraved into the duck call. And when we got it, we're looking at this thing, and it's engraved all the way around. And we're like, oh man, this is super cool. Like, where'd you get this? And the guy's like, well, I actually make them. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And turns out the one that we were about to engrave was $1,000 custom job.
Gosh.
And this guy is like one of the number one duck collars in the nation, like makers of duck collars. Yeah. And so we're just kind of like, you hand engraved all of this stuff? And he's like, yeah. He's like, that took me about 20 hours of just sitting there with a die grinder, just hand grinding it down. And I was just like blown away. Like you need to go look at it on Instagram because that guy made that all on his own. And it is just so cool.
And that's on your Precision Ingenuity Instagram account?
Yeah, that's on my Precision Ingenuity Instagram account. So yeah, that guy, he is, I was extremely impressed. And then when I started looking through his Instagram account of some other stuff that he did, I was just like, oh my goodness. And so, yeah. So for those of you who do see the video, there's a teaser of it. It's not going to be as good as if you go look at it, but he hand engraved all of that stuff. And what's cool is he's got some ideas of some things that he might want to do. And so we might be able to collaborate with him in the future. Cause I think he wants to bring a little bit of machining into his products a little bit more than what he has done so far. So I'm excited and hope that we are able to collaborate with him on that. Cause he's got some crazy skill in what he's able to do. And I love meeting people with talent and that kind of have their own small businesses that make things that are kind of niche because there's so many small worlds out there of different products. which kind of brings me onto a slight tangent. Speaking of projects and niche items, how's that Kickstarter of yours going?
Well, let's look at where it is right now. The answer is pretty well. I'm thrilled with the results. Okay, I'm at $14,590, which I can tell you is about 400 carabiners, and I still have 17 days left.
That is awesome. I'm so excited to see you doing as well as you are. I really am. Have you been doing a lot of the ad stuff? I know that's kind of been a continuing topic about ads and things. Have you come to any conclusions so far?
So I'm working on it. What I know is that of the sales that Google Analytics tracks, about a third of them are coming from advertising. However, It is only tracking at this point maybe 15%, maybe 20% of my total sales. Just so much of that information gets past it. And it's working. I'm then working from a really small sample size. So I don't know if that number is representative of all of the sales that I'm getting or not.
Gotcha.
So it's hard to tell. What I'm doing now is I'm going to leave ads on for a couple days and then turn them off for a couple days and then turn them on for a couple days, and just to see if there's a difference in the rate of sales that I'm getting.
Gotcha.
So
yeah. Well, okay. So if advertising is not contributing as much as you think it is, then what would you consider to be your reason for so much more success on this one prior to previous ones?
So the most backed Kickstarter reward is $25. Mm-hmm. And these carabiners are sitting at $30. So that's part of it. Is it's appealing. The price point is very impulse buyable for the market.
Gotcha.
Also, my product photography from Adam C is fantastic, and I have my cover image is just this nice, beautiful array of very bright carabiners. Mm-hmm. And it's very eye catching. So I think it plays well in search and on the homepage. I'm not on how do I word it? I'm not on everybody's homepage, but everybody gets their own recommended products on Kickstarter. And I can tell that a lot of my sales are coming from, 15% of my sales are from Kickstarter recommending me on that one.
Oh, that's page. Awesome.
And then another 14% are coming from search, which is either, advanced discovery, which is separate from search. So that is people looking for recommendations. So basically, at least 30% of my sales are coming from Kickstarter.
That's awesome.
I will take gladly.
Well, that's awesome because you don't have to pay for those. That's kind of free advertising, isn't it?
Yep. Well, I'm paying 8% of my revenue to Kickstarter, but totally worth it.
Yeah. Free in the sense of it's not any additional extra. You know where that money's going and where that money came from. So
yeah. And I don't know if you figure that about another third of that is coming from ads, which may or may not be true, and then the last third would be driven from Instagram and YouTube. So I don't know. I guess that would be about accurate.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It sounds like it could be true.
Yep. So back to my week. We have started putting everything up on our Etsy page, and so we've started to have some sales trickling in from that, which is nice. Really nice to see. So I'm excited about that. And so we have an event coming up locally. It's the first year they're doing it, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. We got a booth for it. It's called the Testicle Festival. I know it is the funniest sounding name, but they've been advertising it like crazy, and it's just some sort of outdoor, guy centric crazy shenanigans. they have so many events. There's going to be so many people at this thing. But we're going to get a booth, and while we're not going to be able to sell any gun-related items, one thing that I think we'll do massive is we're thinking about bringing our laser and doing like $5 or $10 engravings on people's tumblers, and I think that that'll go nuts and get our name out there like crazy. So, and that's coming up late October, so about a month away. Okay. So we're looking. Yeah, I know it is they have so many funny like events, and I apologize for any viewers who are offended by that, but it is the funniest thing.
That's fair. My mom is probably listening. Sorry, Mom.
I apologize. So you got to go where the people are.
Oh gosh.
So, but we kind of found that out whenever we were doing our when we did our gun booth. We went to the gun show here recently. They kind of gave us a brochure of all the stuff, and they were telling us that one's going to be like, they've been advertising that one the most in the area, and it's going to be like one of the biggest ones for this year. And so they said, if you want to get your name out, that's really where you need to be. So we're going to try to do it.
Yep.
So what about IMTS? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. I feel like I need to tell this as a story because a lot happened. Okay. So I was planning. I did end up going with my whole family. We used it as kind of an excuse for a little mini vacation. And granted, out of the days that I was up there, like 3 of them, 2 of them I would be at IMTS, and 1 of them I was working for a day job remotely. So like they went off on their own and did Chicago stuff for 3 days. And then we, spent 1 day doing family stuff. We went to one of the Lake Michigan beaches and hung out there. Anyway, so we were supposed to leave Tuesday evening, and we started getting everything ready, started getting stuff put in the car, and I was going to go fill it up with gas before we left. I went to start the car to go get gas, and I turned on the air conditioning, and it just smelled like death. Like, oh, no. It was like borderline unlivable in the car. And turns out a little mousie at some point got into the car, crawled up into the cabin air filter, and got stuck and died.
Oh no, that's not good.
So it took us a while to find it. It took me a while to find it. I was like just kind of sticking my shop vac everywhere, seeing if I could suck something up. And eventually I started like watching YouTube videos about the different like AC parts of the car and like how to get to the filter. And eventually I figured out where the cabin air filter was, and which you had to take off the glove compartment to get to. And yep, sure enough, right on top of it, little dead mousie sitting there looking at me. So I
was just going to break in a quick second in the middle of your story because I had some appliances break at my house too. My dryer went out. So
oh, that sucks.
Yeah, but we ended up getting it fixed. But it was the week of things going out, it sounds like. Because anyways, sorry, I interrupted your story.
There's a display on our microwave also went out, which was annoying. Anyway, so excuse me as I fix my headphones. Okay. So finally get that smell sorted out. And like I went to go get gas and to go get a new air filter to kind of hopefully get some of the remnants of the smell out of there. And during that process, I just started feeling sick and awful. And like I started getting a headache and I was dizzy and like started getting like chills. And I was worried that I would not be able to drive home after getting the air filter. Like I almost called my wife to come pick me up. And I ended up making it home, obviously. And I just got home and went to bed. And like we were supposed to be leaving at this point, but I just felt so awful. Like I was kind of on the edge of throwing up and like chills, and I had like 103-degree fever.
That's not good.
I don't remember ever getting sick this hard and like it putting me down, like in bed, unable to do anything. And so I slept for like 16 hours straight. And then in the morning, like I was kind of feeling all right. And so we still packed up the car and left, I don't know, around noon or so, maybe a little bit before noon. And my wife drove us up to Chicago. We had an Airbnb up there. And I basically just, popped Tylenols a couple times to make sure if I had any fever left, it stayed down and to combat a headache. But really, after that, I was fine. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was food. I mean, I didn't eat the mouse. Like, it couldn't have been the mouse. I have to assume it was like food poisoning or something.
Yeah,
because it just dropped me, and then afterwards I was fine again. Except now that I'm stuffy, but I think that's unrelated. So, that just kind of threw off my entire week. And instead of getting all of Wednesday at IMTS, I got there around 3, where there was a Insta Machinist meetup, and that was awesome. There were so many people there who I only knew by like their hands and Instagram tag, because like that's all you see on Instagram. I'm not going to try to shout out names because I'm going to forget half of them and offend the other half.
Yeah.
But I got to meet John Saunders.
Was
we were at the
Grimsmo
Kern booth too, so I got to see a Kern. Grimsmo was at IMTS. I think he was even at the Insta Machinist meetup, but I never actually like got a chance to go say hi.
Oh, really? So back before Grimsmo got as big as he is, when he was still kind of in the growing stage, I had a couple friends that were big knife nuts, and they actually got to meet him because he was at a knife show. I think it was in Vegas or
probably
something.
Blade Show.
Blade Show, I think is when it was, and they actually went and got to go meet him, and they had some photos taken with him. So I was like super jealous of that. But
I feel like a lot of other people got to see him, but I did not. I think it was just wrong place, wrong time, and
yeah. So what about the Kerns? You got to look at those
at the Kern? Is that what you said? I did. I didn't like you go dig in an electrical cabinet or anything. It's a really pretty machine, but it does look just about like any other 5-axis machine.
Does it look bigger or smaller in person than on video? After watching different videos with them,
the one they had there felt small, but it did not have the a row of pallet changer like I'm used to seeing in the Grimsmo videos.
Yeah, that's cool.
But anyway, so Instant Machines meetup, I met a whole bunch of people, and I showed John Saunders my carabiner, and he went, "Thank you," and he looked so thankful, and he just stuck it in his pocket, and I was like, "Oh, that was the only one that I have with me. Apparently, I'm giving this to you now."
Oh no!
So John Saunders kind of stole a carabiner because he thought I was giving it to him. But like, I didn't have the heart to say like, no, you can just look at that. I need that back, because he looked so appreciative and like looked down at it thankfully, and it's like, okay, I guess you can have it.
Now, hopefully you got to talk with him a little bit. Hopefully you didn't just like see him in passing and be like, "Hey, look at this carabiner," and then he was like, "Oh, cool," and then walked off.
We talked for like 5 minutes or something. There was a group of us. I didn't really have much to say. Like, "Hey, I watch your videos."
Yeah.
The carabiner was actually like my crutch for the night, and unfortunately, that was pretty late because here's a group of people socialize is not my element, but being able to go up to machinist and be like, "Hey, look, see that I made this. It's kind of cool. It flexes." That was enough of an icebreaker to help me articulate.
Yeah. Well, that's still really cool. Did you meet any of the guys from Taps or no? What was it? Within Tolerance? Any of those guys?
I waved at Dylan, Protein Machining. I don't think we ever actually had a conversation. I think we said hi. I also saw what was his name? The guy who was originally on the podcast. He did the Lego business.
Yeah.
I saw him, but again, didn't really talk to him.
Brick Tactical.
Brick Tactical.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to say hi to him, but he was kind of in
horrible at names. I'm sorry, Brick Tactical. I do enjoy your stuff.
I have the same problem.
Now, did you hang out with any guys and kind of tour in a group with anyone?
So after that, me, Foot Pedal Jones and Fidget Things, went and walked around, and we mostly looked at like the Willemans and then the new Pocket NC, and then another company you've probably seen on Instagram called Level or Leville or
I don't think I've seen anything on them.
They're a cool company, but I really enjoyed walking around with those two. They were like way more knowledgeable on machines, so being able to just kind of like let them talk to the sales guys was very educational.
I talk some with Fidget Things. Probably next to you, he's probably the next guy that I talk the most to on Instagram. Was it fun hanging out with him in person? He's someone that I always thought would be fun to bring on the podcast.
We could probably do that. He was a great guy. He was a lot more buff than I was expecting. I don't know why. I'd always kind of imagined him as like a kind of tall, skinny, like more nerdy guy who makes fidget things, but no.
He's a big guy.
Yeah. And then Foot Pedal Jones works for Tormach. And he's the guy that I always come to when I have weird issues, like my crash that we should also talk about. I forgot about that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I enjoyed meeting those two in person, and we got along, really well right off the bat.
That's good. I think it's always nice when you can travel in groups on stuff like that, because people can kind of fill in for everyone else's lack of knowledge. Someone might be knowledgeable in an area over here and someone else over here. So it's kind of nice. Yep.
On the second day I was there, which was Friday, I skipped Thursday to work remotely. On Friday in the morning, I hung out with the Serven Solutions guys, and that was cool. I enjoyed catching up with them. And then a couple hours with actually one of my Patreon members named Denzel. I met him at the Instant Machinist meetup, but I felt guilty for kind of like saying hi and then running. Podcasts are terrible for people with allergies.
Yeah. No worries. I didn't know what to say. I was going to try to fill the silence, but I didn't have anything.
Your co-host here dripping boogers. Maybe we should have put out the video on this one.
Yeah. Just put a warning on the front.
Yeah. Anyway, so I hung out with Denzel for, I don't know, probably like 3 or 4 hours. And he was fun to talk to because he's a much more experienced machinist than I am. And then the last part of the show, I was on my own, which was also kind of fun in its own way.
Yeah. How big's the place? Like from your pretty massive?
It is 33 acres.
Wow.
Of trade show floor. Like it is huge.
Is it all under one roof, or is it broken into separate buildings?
There are 4 different buildings, with some of which with multiple floors.
Wow. I think I saw a post on the Xometry booth. Did you stop by there?
I saw it and didn't really. What was I going to say? Like, hey, I may be a partner someday. Like, I already know about Xometry. I don't know what else I would do.
It'd just be interesting to actually meet someone in person who worked there. And I think they had a BattleBot robot in front of their booth that they had done parts for. That would be enough to draw me over there to take a look at it, at least.
Yeah, Hypershock was there, which is the BattleBot. The thing you don't understand is that every booth is like that. There's always something. Really? Yeah, there's Fanic arms moving cars around and stuff.
Oh, sounds like it'd be a kid in a candy shop.
It is very much kid in candy shop the whole time you're there.
So the Pocket NC, what'd you think of that one? That was another one that kind of interested me.
So it's just such a clean little small machine, and it's about the size of a refrigerator when it's on its stand. The thing that surprised me is it actually is a fairly it's not a very deep machine. It's mostly electrical cabinet and not a whole lot between the door and the back of the machine. But it's really neatly put together. It all looks super polished. They had some coolant issues there, and it flooded their electrical box, which kept the machine from running for most of the show.
Oh, no, that's not good.
Yeah.
Now, they were making your carabiners, so did you get a chance to take a look at them and compare them to what you've been doing?
Yes, I did. So I was able to get one that they made at the show, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of funny because I gave them my old school design, which had the really long slot going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up changing my design to be easier to machine because I was getting warping.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's where I got my modern, like, skeletalized design.
Mm-hmm.
They went through a lot of the same process in a parallel path. And it's funny because if you look at their carabiner, theirs has almost the exact same slot that mine does now. Except
Really?
except they changed it. Oh, how do I explain this? Basically, there was a decorative slot, and then like before the flexure, and then there's like the flexure slot,
Mm-hmm.
and they just made the decorative slot a lot longer and the flexure slot shorter, and it almost exactly matches mine.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's parallel engineering there,
That's
just getting
cool.
the same place with different starting points.
Mm-hmm. Did they make any announcements as to when they're going to make them available and when they're going to go live to sell?
I don't think they know yet. They were talking about beta units next year, which I called dibs on one. So I'll hopefully get to play with one.
Yeah. Now, I think I remember you mentioning something else about the Haas UMC 350. I after you mentioned that, I haven't seen anywhere online anything about that. So what's that about?
So that was announced at IMTS. That
Yeah, I
was
kind of
the
figured.
the debut. It is basically one of their DT or DM machines with the trunnion in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
Um,
cool. That sounds like it'd be like super popular.
yeah, I don't know. It's a Haas five axis. Like it's
Yeah,
exactly what you would expect. Uh, no more, no less. Like it
yeah,
looks nice to me, especially if you don't have much floor space.
yeah. That's well, as a guy who's has a very small shop and dreams about putting bigger machines than my shop can fit, I'm drawn to the smaller machines, and I'm always interested to see, the smaller 5-axis stuff. Now,
Yep.
I think whenever the week before IMTS, you asked me if there was anything that you could look at there for me, and I said cobots. So how were the cobots there?
So I have a confession. I
You
had lots
forgot?
of expectations going into IMTS and plans on things I was going to do, like record a YouTube video,
Mm-hmm.
and I did none of them. I got there and I just focused on basically I just focused on things that I needed for my carabiners.
Mm-hmm. So
So
on that note, what did you find? Seems like you didn't find my cobot stuff. Did you find anything on to help out with your
well, in
carabiners?
terms of cobots, I learned there's lots of them, and they're basically all the same price point now.
Oh,
So
really?
I think at this point it's basically choose your jelly bean cobot.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I think I haven't really looked at very many. UARM has kind of been in the game the longest. Well, maybe not the longest, but they're very popular. And I've looked at some of their pricing, and I mean, you can get into one for cheaper than what I got my Haas for like some stuff. So it's definitely in striking range of possibilities if I can get the right kind of work.
People seem to like the Fanic ones. I know
Oh,
Pocket
really?
NC, or excuse me, I should call them Penta Machine Co. They had issues with UR robots, and they ended up switching to all Fanic, and they like
Okay.
those better.
Now, their whole Pocket NC Pro, I guess, is that what they're calling it? Is the
They,
is
they call
the
it the Solo, which
the
nobody's
Solo?
going to call it, but they can try.
Okay. Well, the Solo, it's designed with an interchangeable pallet system, correct?
Yes, and that was
Are
actually
they?
one of the things I spent a long time looking at. It's a shunk system,
Mm-hmm.
and so I went over to the shunk booth and looked at all their accessories and stuff.
What was your opinions on it after looking at it in person?
The shunk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's like top tier.
Okay.
Um, it's all super high end. Their vices are like hardened and polished everywhere. They're
Oh my.
immaculate. They had a lot of automation stuff, both in terms of pallet loading and part loading. The Vero system that the Pocket NC has on it is very slick. They had a couple of different accessories for it. It's, very compact, very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure there are things that are close or higher end, more accurate if you really wanted to look for them, but you'd be hard pressed to find something.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's another one of those aspects about the Solo that I find very fascinating. If I were ever to go down that route, I would love to have that just because it's pretty much already set up for automation by all accounts.
That, I think it'll be a basically perfect machine for me, especially once we get automation rolling, assuming I have the volume to support it. Mm-hmm. Is because it can just it does one and done parts. Mm-hmm. You get a finished part. Maybe you have to do a simple op on the back to remove a tab or whatever. But if you design your part right, you don't need to do that necessarily, or you can just tumble it to death like I do.
Yeah, that's true.
And then like you can fit a lot of them in a small space without very much power, and they will fit through my garage door, which not many other machines do because it's a very low garage door.
So speaking of size and power requirements, are those 110 machines or 220 machines? And like what all are they planning on coming with? Like, are they kind of come on a stand, or are they going to have different versions? Because that's another thing that I've always kind of wondered looking at them, was they always look like they were on a table. And so I didn't know if they're going to be on the table or if they're going to be freestanding.
So they are working on that. One of the things they said is they can't run it past 20% rapids on that table. Otherwise it starts to wobble.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to do he said an epoxy granite table and really add a lot of mass to dampen the system. And then also add, chip management down below and stuff. A bigger coolant.
What are they doing right now for chip management? Is they just going into like a 5-gallon bucket or something?
They have a little basket that sits underneath the trunnion. It's fine, but I would very much not like to run a machine with that as the only chip removal option.
Yeah. That's funny.
It had a cute little like 1-gallon tank with like a little strainer underneath it.
Hey, whatever you got to do. I mean, I know they kind of sprinted to the finish line to get it ready for IMTS. So the fact that they had it there and they had stuff that was working, even if it was only part of the time, is an impressive achievement. Yep. So that's exciting.
But yeah, 220 single phase. I didn't ask about how many amps, but it can't be that much.
Yeah. Do you know how many horsepower the spindle is?
Ooh, I don't know that. I know it is like a 40K RPM spindle. HSK 25E, if I remember right.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
I think it was about 16 tools in an ATC. And they were looking at a different spindle that had a skinnier nose, which let them get, I think, up to 30 tools in that little drawer they had.
That'd be cool.
So especially when you start having robots and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because the more tools you have and the ability to switch things out, it's so cool what you can do.
Yep.
So, not all of us can have a Kern with over 200 tools, but that's going to be our baby Kern. I think.
Yeah, the pocket Kern.
Pocket Kern. That's what they should have called it, the pocket Kern.
So that was cool to see.
Pocket kernel. That way it's not quite
kernel.
A little different.
So I talked about the level machines, and you should look at these. I guess I'll just send you the link afterwards. It's like LEVIL, I believe, or LIVEL maybe.
Okay.
Anyway, they make machines kind of in the same form factor.
Oh, really?
And they have a machine that's about the same size. It's kind of refrigerator sized, but it is a mill turn.
Oh.
And
so is it like a baby Williman?
Sort of, except it doesn't have a bar feeder.
Oh, that'd be cool if it did.
So, and it's just a really cool machine. The problem is they are not nearly as polished as Pocket NC. like the hardware is arguably like stouter,
Mm-hmm.
and like it can do more because it's a mill turn and not just a 5-axis. But like I don't know, their software was not there. Like they have their own controller, which is the only one that'll run single phase, and I think with that you get down to like 70K on it. Um, but like it couldn't do 5-axis simultaneous, and like it couldn't do tool center point control, and it sounded like it was pretty limited on code processing.
That's not good.
Yeah, or you could step up to a big boy Fanuc controller and get all that stuff, but then you're limited to where you had to have 3-phase, and also it was way more expensive, and also Fanuc,
Yeah.
which some
Yeah.
people like, some people don't, but
That's true. It's there's definitely people that you either love it or you hate it. There's not really much room in between, at least
yeah.
from what I've seen.
So
So,
Pocket NC has a really slick controller, and granted, it is on a browser based controller.
is it a BeagleBone like their smaller machine or something similar to that?
Um, the computer in the new machine is not just the same BeagleBone, no, but it's running the same software.
Okay.
So
Are are they going to ship with like a little console like what he had um, for it's like out on the arm?
I don't know. They just had an iPad sitting there, which again, one of the cool things about their controllers, it's browser based, which means you can use it on anything with an internet browser, and it
That's
doesn't actually go through the internet. Like you're just plugging into the machine.
mm-hmm.
But then you open Chrome and you go to 192.168. Whatever. Um, and their new controller is all touchscreen based. You can still use the
That's cool.
keyboard and stuff, but it's really slick, and it'll do things like while it's cutting, you can adjust surface speed,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of just RPM, you can adjust surface speed, and
Oh,
instead
that is nice.
of adjusting um, feed rate, you can instead of adjusting inches per minute, you can adjust feed per tooth.
That is one of my biggest complaints about some of the stuff that is like whenever you're adjusting those things, it's like I don't know what my feed rate or my surface footage is or my inch per minute. Like I don't know, all that gets thrown out the window as soon as you start adjusting those knobs. You're
Yeah.
just kind of guessing at that point. So
So
that is a very pleasant thing to hear. Um, so moving away from IMTS for a minute, you mentioned something a little bit ago that I'm kind of curious about now.
so I kind of had, we'll call it a soft crash with my mill.
Okay, what
So
happened?
let's go back 2 weeks to where we were talking about salami slicing meeples.
Uh huh.
Do you remember what issue I was having with salami slicing meeples?
I think you were throwing them all across your machine. Is that the one, or are you talking about a different issue?
No, that actually they stayed put pretty well. I was having issues where on the third meeple down on my bar, for whatever reason, it would vibrate my tool setter and cause it to trigger.
Yes, yes. Okay, that's ringing the bell now. Yep.
My solution to this was to unplug tool setter and put a little foam hat just a piece of foam that I had laying around. I put a little hat on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of that hat was to remind me that I had unplugged the tool setter, so that
I
would be a visual signal to me when I went to set a tool that I had unplugged the tool setter.
I feel like I see where this story's going.
That hat did not stay on the tool setter when I was cleaning my machine one day, and it fell off. And I went, "Oh, I should put that back on." And then I did not.
Oh no.
So then a couple of days later, I go to set a tool, and I put it in. I hit go. I turn around to go get the next one, and I just hear crunch.
Oh no.
And I very much crunched it was a 1/16 inch ball mill, so I guess it could have been worse, but just pulverized that thing. And by
Oh
the time I
no.
got turned around to it, you know the collet nut had firmly planted itself all the way down the tool setter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did e-stop it before it aired out. So that's like it didn't crash as hard as it could have.
Yeah. That's is everything else fine? Like, did you hurt anything?
So the tool is very much broken.
Apart from
The
that.
tool setter, the mill is fine. Like nothing in the mechanics of the mill are hurt. As far as it's convinced it drilled a really hard hole.
Okay.
Positive or a Z crash is the best kind of crash.
That's true. That's true.
The tool setter, I think, is fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and I touched off a tool to see how much it changed, and it changed by like 75 thou, if I remember right, under 100 thou, but like a pretty significant change.
Yeah.
But I reprobed that tool 10 times, and every time it was within like whatever the minimum unit is on the Tormach. I don't remember if it's a 10th or whatever, but
did you scratch the surface or damage the surface of your tool setter?
Yes, that's probably the most major casualty. Is there right in the middle of it? There is a kind of big chipped area, probably about an 1/8 inch across, which is the diameter of the tool, which would make sense. However, I was able to take a stone, which didn't cut the carbide, but it made sure there were no burrs on top. So all of the damage is below the surface, not like sticking up above. And I've been able to touch tools off, just like off center.
Gotcha.
So it's definitely on my
on your reorder list.
It's definitely on my reorder list. Unfortunately, this was one that came with my first Tormach, and it was before they switched to their nicer version of it. So, like, I ruined a $200 tool, not a $1,300 one.
Well, that's always nice. It's nice if it never happens, but it's always nice when the blow doesn't hurt as bad as it could have.
But I reset it off with my I redid the spindle touch off thingy where you're setting your 0. And all of my tools were like 5 thou off of where they should have been after doing that. So I just reset all of my tools, and it's making perfectly good parts. The only thing is I forgot to reset my probe, and so my probe has been a little bit off in Z. But it hasn't come back to bite me yet.
So
yeah, probably should get a new tool setter just to be sure. But
we ran into an interesting error on our lathe today while running this rush job. So on the Haas machines, and it's funny because I've always heard this said about Haas machines. Haas might rate it as a 20 horse machine, but what they're doing is they have a 10 horse motor or 15 horse motor that they're overloading to get it up to that 20 horse rating.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but I could kind of see it.
Tormach does that too.
Yeah, because what was happening today was I had a really small stainless steel part, less than an inch in diameter, and I was making 100 of them, and it had a lot of small features on the surface. So it was constantly ramping up and ramping down with the constant surface footage turned on.
Yeah.
And so the cut was really light, but it was it was going from like 3,000 to 3,500 to like 2,500 in very short bursts. And so just the mass of the whole system was keeping it up in that 100 to 200% spindle power range, even though we weren't using anywhere near that. It was just the inertia of speeding up and slowing down the giant chuck.
Yeah.
And we kept about once every 15 minutes or so, the machine would trip and say that the spindle motor's been overloaded, and it would just, and then it would sit there and just freewheel the main spindle, and it'd take like a minute or two for it to like come to a complete stop where you could reset everything. And that was the most annoying part of it, was that it would be like, you overloaded your spindle, so make sure that change this, and this, and then Yeah, it's just sitting there like winding down. It's just like, can you like put on the brake, or like, is there anything I can do to like stop this thing? Because it's just sitting here just spinning forever. So, one thing I do think, and I wonder, I haven't really heard anyone ever talk about this, but we got a 3-jaw hydraulic chuck on it, kind of what it comes with from the factory. We'd like to switch it to a Royal collet system.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if those seem to be a lot smaller diameter. And one of the advantages that we have if we ever do go to that is right now we have boring bars every other tool holder. And we have to go every other tool holder because if you go every tool holder with like boring bars and drill bits and things, they'll crash into the 3-jaw because it's an 8-inch spindle, and the spacing between your boring bars is larger than that. But when you go to a collet system, like the Royal collet system, it shrinks that down to about 4 inches or 5 inches in diameter instead of 8 inches. And so then you can stick tools next to each other and they won't crash. So I'm wondering if not only will we get the benefit of being able to use more tool holders, but will it take a lot of the mass of that larger spindle out of the equation to make it just run faster. Like I wonder if I'll get faster cycle times and it'll be using less power. So
that's interesting because you're right. That's not something that people talk about, except maybe like the difference between a BT30 and a BT40 mill or whatever, a Cat 40 mill.
But I have never really heard anyone talk about it in relation to like a lathe.
Yeah, physics are physics, and like there's a lot of energy in that chuck.
Yeah, there is. That thing's huge and heavy. So I wonder if I go to and I think the Royal collet systems, if I remember right, the outer housing I think is aluminum, and it's like it might not be, but I feel like it's an aluminum housing with like a steel liners on the inside that are actually machined, and so that might even reduce more weight. I could be wrong on that. There was something I thought I read about that, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just full of junk on that. Like it might not be. I'll teach her, hey, keep this family friendly. Maybe I'm just full of it. But I feel like I remember seeing something. Maybe it wasn't Royal. I'll have to do some research on that. But anyways, regardless, just being a smaller diameter, going from I think it's 8 inches, and I think the Royal collet system we were looking at was like 4.6 inches in diameter. So you're like almost cutting it in half. That's got to remove a lot of inertia out of the system as a whole.
Yeah, I would think so. At very least, it would fix your overpower issues.
Yeah, and that's not something that happens very often. And like I've honestly only ever had it happen like one time before, but this part was just one that had so many weird features that were all like stacked up really close together. It was a 3/4 inch part that we were machining out of a 1/2 inch part, or 1/2 inch round, or 3/4 of an inch part that we were machining out of a 1 inch stainless steel bar, and it was about an inch long, and it had 6 different diameters in that about an inch range.
Yeah,
and so of different lengths and features, and so it was quickly adjusting as it's moving from one end to the other rather rapidly. And so it was putting a lot of load on our machine. So
did you find a fix or a workaround, or did you just deal with it?
We just dealt with it because it happens sporadically. I think we tried slowing it down a little bit, but I mean, it was constantly ramping up and ramping down, and it was like there's not much we can do to fix that unless we want to add like a minute or two to our cycle time. And I'd much rather just have the machine just error out because nothing's breaking, nothing's happening. The only thing it does is you got to wait for the spindle to wind down, which can be annoying. But other than that, it wasn't hurting anything.
Back when I had a lathe, I just ran everything at max speed.
Yeah. Well, we've already got it limited. See, it's a 4,000 RPM machine, and we've already got it software limited to 3,500.
Okay.
Just because when it gets to that last 500 RPM is terrifying. and it doesn't gain you too much. And that last 500 RPM will actually dim the lights of the shop.
Really?
Yeah. So that was another reason that we did that, so that we didn't have major power fluctuations in the building as a whole.
Now, if you got the Royal, do you think that would still be the same way? Or do you think you'd be comfortable going down?
We might be comfortable opening up the RPMs if it didn't have as much mass, because you can just hear it whenever it's trying to speed up or slow down. You can just watch that; it'll peg the needle at 200% spindle load or more, and that's with it empty. Like, I've taken everything off of it and just had it be no parts, no nothing, just the spindle on its own, and had it ramp up to 4,000 RPM and ramp down, and it pegs the spindle and takes a minute for it to get there, just because of how much mass it's moving, and that's with no bars, no nothing on it.
Did you get too big of a chuck? Should you have gotten a 6-inch instead of an 8-inch or whatever?
I didn't have a choice. I mean, if I don't remember having a choice on that, on the Haas one, I think it's just factory what it comes with.
Interesting.
And that's might be part of the reason people always say that Haas overrates their machines, is because they're putting an 8-inch chuck on a machine that, might not have the horsepower to handle it on its own, let alone with parts in there, if you're trying to quickly ramp up and ramp down depending on what you're doing. So, and I could see that. It's also quite a loud machine. I go to a local shop and they just have Mazaks everywhere. That's all they run is Mazak. And it is so much quieter. And it doesn't sound like those machines are getting pushed as hard as my machine when I tell it to go 0 to 4,000 versus when I hear theirs. It's a lot quieter. It just sounds a lot more controlled. So I totally understand why people would look at the Haas and go, yeah, that's, it's not as powerful as they claim it is. And,
yeah.
So in that respect, I totally understand. But for us, it's a major step up from the Tormach. So, like, I'm not complaining in the slightest, because I can compete and sometimes outcompete some of these other guys around here, just because it's capable of it. And if I'm smart with my programming and tool buying.
Yeah.
So at least I'm in the ballpark now.
In terms of quiet machines, the quietest machine I have ever seen was the one of the Willies at IMTS. We were standing there looking at it running, and I thought it was air cutting until it spat out a finished part. Like,
oh, really?
It was so dead quiet. Also, there was full pressure oil blast, so it's not like you could see what was happening. But
yeah,
I thought it was air cutting, and then it was spitting out parts. It was like, oh, that's actually doing a pretty significant amount of work. It was also a dual spindle Williman, which was super cool.
That is cool. So at IMTS, when they're spitting out, when the places that are spitting out actual parts, do they let people walk off with those parts, or like, what do they do with them?
I think that's the idea generally. Yes.
Okay. That'd be cool.
Like, a lot of places make things like the carabiner that's like actually a cool part, or like a bottle opener, or somewhere they were making a little tiny vise, like a 2-inch, long functional vise. That may have actually been Williman. I don't know. I only ever saw one in pictures.
That's cool.
But the parts they were making on that Williman were just like, gibberish pseudo medical parts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, you can get a cool piece of brass.
Pretty cool to have.
Yeah.
So now, Kern, I never did get you broken carbide, and for that I am greatly sorry. But what were they doing? What were they machining out of broken carbide for everyone?
I think they were just machining the top off.
Is that it?
I think so.
I thought they were going to machine something into it.
I don't know. Maybe not. I didn't pay enough attention. Kerns are cool, but like, were not my priority for the show.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm the guy that would like to go to like the shop room of like a supercar place, and I'll just sit there and ask the salesman all these questions, knowing full and well that I am not going to be able to afford anything like that probably in my lifetime. But
that's a little bit how I felt when I was in the Shunk booth. I also was in the Rigo Fix booth for a while, but that's because I know somebody who works there.
Oh, that's a cool system. I'd like to learn more about it at some point.
The ER collet?
The Rigo Fix?
Yeah, you mean the Power Grip.
Yeah, the Power Grip. Yeah,
Rigo Fix invented the ER collet.
Oh no, I was talking about their Power Grip, where it's like the hydraulic press thing.
Power Grip was cool.
Yeah. Is it cost competitive with shrink fitting?
No.
Is it?
It's way more.
They're more
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure the unit is probably cost competitive with a shrink fit unit, but the holders are significant more. I'm sure. Well, I don't know. What are they? Big Deshoa. They might have more expensive holders than Power Grip.
Mm-hmm.
The Power Grip is expensive and high end.
Yeah, but the advantage of it is the collared system, so you don't have to buy, in theory, as many holders.
Yes,
because you can just switch out the collets like an ER.
You also just don't have to worry about run out. Like the run out's always perfect.
Yeah. That's something that I haven't really dealt with much yet, but I'm sure it's something that I should pay more attention to. But
same. I just kind of stick my head in a hole and ignore it.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I kind of look at it. My Tormach, I think I tried to measure it at one point. I stuck a holder in there and I stuck a gauge up in there, and I think I had like a half a thou run out or something like that. And I was like, man, I could try to get my tools on center, but I don't think that even if I got them on center, I'm still gonna have if I'm that particular, like I'm still going to have issues with just the spindle, so it's probably not worth my time. Plus I'm not running any parts that are like remotely need that kind of concentricity. So
yeah. I stuck an indicator on the taper of mine when I first got it, and even with a Mitutoyo tenths indicator, I couldn't measure any run out. As far as my
indicator, been the holder.
Yes, because I think all the air comes from the holders.
Yeah, so that's a valid point. I don't think I put it on the actual taper of the machine. I should probably try that and see if I measure. And I also I don't really have a very good like Noga stand and indicator as I figured out on my lathe, but I tried to find the center on a couple of those holders. So I do need to invest in some better measuring equipment in the long run.
I have a good indicator, but a crappy stand.
Yeah. See, I have crappy both. So I would like to get something nicer in the near future. But let's see here. What else we got? What's the rest of your week looking like now that you're back?
So I have a lot of catch up to do. The big thing for me right now that's, the thing immediately in front of me is I'm making a pry bar as an add-on item for my Kickstarter that has been requested by many people. And I think it'll, make $1,000 or whatever in sales. Hey. I have that designed. I did a prototype before IMTS and I wasn't happy with it. That's actually when I broke my tool setter, but I still got the parts made. And now I've redesigned it to hopefully be more comfortable in the hand. My other one was just too short and it was like, pry. So this one's still skinny and lightweight, but, reasonably long. Need to get that done. And those will go. I need to make about 15 of those and get those into the prototype of the month boxes for my Patreons so that they can give me feedback on them before the campaign ends. Just so that, I know I have a good product before I start shipping them to people.
Yeah, that sounds like something that you're running out of time fast on.
Yeah. The other thing that there's a big time crunch on is I'm going to get the carabiner testing robot back up on a live stream. This time on YouTube, where I can do it for indefinite periods instead of Instagram, where I had to restart it every 4 hours. And there is a news site that I am blanking on the name of right now that somebody on the Instagram or the Insta Machinist Discord thinks that I will be able to get on if I do that live stream. Like I can submit myself to them for their review. A hack a day. It's hack a day.
Oh, okay.
So
Cool.
they think they have a company. They've been on Hackaday like a number of times to promote themselves. And like I think if we have the story about the carabiner testing robot being live streamed,
Mm-hmm.
that'll get me on there and hopefully pick me up some more traffic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about getting eyeballs.
Yep.
So
So my first publicity stunt.
depending on how successful, it could spawn a whole thing.
Yeah. My
So
carabiner testing robot business. Man,
there you go.
people were angry when I stopped that test.
Really?
I got probably 10 messages like, why did you stop it? Keep it going. The carabiner hasn't failed yet. What are you doing? Yeah. Like so many people like very concerned about this test. So
Oh
I need to
man.
bring it back.
So that gives me courage because I think I mentioned this before. I don't remember if I did or not. But one thing that I think would be really fun to do would be, because we do the gun related stuff, um, slide milling. Man, there is so many people that have so many questions about slide milling and like the integrity of the gun after you've done cutting on the slide of the gun. And so
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I really want to do, it's kind of similar to your robot testing, is I want to um, machine it away and try to get it as light as possible and try to get it to the point where it physically fails. At that point, I'm obviously do not want to be holding it, but but I'd like to stick it up on like a test stand and pull the trigger from quite a ways away and see it malfunction and either blow up or um, you know, just become unreliable to shoot, and just try to figure out how much weight can you take out and which components are actually important to the function of the gun, because
Interesting.
there is a lot of mass in those. And honestly, I've been thinking about it from an engineering perspective. I don't know how much you know about guns, but for like your Glocks or your polymer based guns in general,
Mm-hmm.
they have a barrel, and the barrel has is what actually is holding in the bullet
Yep.
assembly itself. And so all of the pressure is contained within the barrel, and that I'm I may be machining guns, but I have not figured out all the gun terminology yet. So, but anyways, the whatever you call that section, the chamber section of the barrel, all of your pressures are housed within that. And so I don't feel like anything forward of that on the gun really matters. All it is there for is to hold the barrel and to give you something to grab onto. And so the only part that of the actual slide that is seeing the force is the rear of it, where it's hitting the primer, because that's actually pushing back against your slide.
Yeah.
But everything forward of that, I feel like, doesn't do anything except keep your barrel in the gun, like from
Now,
falling out of the gun.
would you run into issues with like shell ejection where you're like is the amount of exhaust that's being used to push that slide back tuned to the mass of the slide?
Yes, from the research that I've seen, and people sell different strength springs to compensate if you get a slide that is too light. And so that's probably more of what I'll see. But I want to know, what's that threshold? If I take a slide, and I can't tell you what they weigh because I haven't done any of this research thoroughly. I've just thought about this idea. But if I think they weigh, let's say, 100 grams or 120 grams, and let's say I take 20% of that weight out. Does anything happen? 30%, 40%? Like, how light can I get it before it starts having issues? Like, I did some slide cutting on my pistol, and I shot it for the first time here recently, and it functioned fine. And I don't know how much weight I took out of it. I don't think it was much, but it gets you thinking, like, what are the limits? Like, what are the points of failure that you need to look out for, especially if I'm going to start offering this to more people, and if more people get interested. I want to know so that I can inform my customer. And I think a video on that subject would be entertaining for me and for everyone else who goes down that path.
Yeah. Um Personally, I would not do a video of it failing, like ever. I wouldn't want that out on the internet because people will just associate your name with the gun exploding.
I would say yes, but I would also say no because there's a guy, and I can't remember his YouTube channel, I haven't watched a ton of his stuff, but he's super popular. He does 3D printed gun stuff, and his stuff always fails. But he like goes, he's like on version like 10 or 20 or something like that, trying to get the 3D print stuff to not fail. And so I feel like even if it did fail, it gives you like, if I can go to my customer and be like, hey, listen, I've taken this thing to failure in like all these different modes, trying to figure it out. That way I can guarantee that this product is like, you would never want to drive a car that had never been crash tested. Let's be honest.
Yes.
So I guess in showing that video, I'm showing you like, I'm not going to do this to your gun, but this is what I'm showing you to show that I've figured it out. That way you won't run into these issues. But these are the issues you could run into at these different points. So
I'm not saying don't do the testing. I'm saying think carefully before you post it on social media.
I don't know. That kind of stuff gets clicks, though. I feel like that would, like, a gun blowing up is like how many, like, there's so many gun videos that go popular just because, like, oh, a gun's blowing up. What's going on? Kind of a thing.
Yeah, but see, that's what people remember is the gun blowing up, and all the anti-gun people are like, look at how dangerous it is. Yeah. You shouldn't be allowed to modify guns. It should be illegal. See how dangerous it is? Look, this one exploded. If that was in your kid's hand, it would have taken off his head.
Yeah, but I tried to explode that one.
Yes, but nobody. But like that's not going to be clear on the Channel 6 News when they show the 2-second clip, and
they're gonna those types of people and individuals out there, they're gonna say that kind of stuff regardless if I make a video or not. I mean, they're looking for things to complain about, and I can't. They're not my customer. My customer is not a person who's going to look at that video and go, "Oh, this is unsafe. I'm going to blog about it, create a story about it, and like go tell the world that this is the most dangerous thing known to mankind." My customer is the kind of customer who's going to look at that and go, "Man, that guy is dedicated to his task. He's trying to figure out everything to make sure that I don't have any issues, and he's also making it enjoyable and educating me on the process as well." Like, that's the kind of customer I want in the long run. So I'm not even going to try to make, like, my point of making that video is not to try to convert people. It's more to educate, entertain, and if someone finds that fascinating and would like that done, I've answered questions for them.
The way I would fix that is I would make sure that this shows up too if it's cropped, but I would put text directly underneath the gun throughout the video that says this is an intentional test on a closed course. We were testing to failure.
Yeah,
I think that's how you fix it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Mythbusters.
Ingenuity.com. Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to do budget Mythbusters over here. That's the goal, because I mean they blew up stuff all the time, and it was all for science. I mean, that was the whole spiel, and it was one of the most popular shows and ran for a long time. So I think there's a market for it.
I agree.
I think it'd be fun, but that's a story or a video I've had brewing that I'd like to do at some point. Although we don't really post to YouTube very much, ever, but I'd like to do that at some point down the road when I get time. That magical word that we never have.
I have like 3 YouTube videos recorded right now that just need to be edited.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get there eventually.
It's a lot of work, and I'm sure you're just like me, and that all of your free time you have scheduled for something right now. So it's hard to try to fix things. And if I ever get to a point where we get enough business that I can buy things like a robot and then free up time, I'd love to start making some videos of stuff and I think it'd just be a ton of fun.
Yep. So I know you're a Mike Michalowicz fan. Have you read Clockwork?
I started it a while back, and um, I haven't dived into that one right yet because so
Okay.
far it's just me and one other person, and there's a lot of free time, so we haven't really run into an issue where um, that book I think is directed towards.
I just finished it. And to be fair, I have to agree, it's not my favorite of his, but I think mostly because at this point I've read all of his other books and they all kind of cross over. And so at this point it's like, yeah, I've read most of this. I've heard most of this. But he brings up good points about like he basically breaks down the actions of a business into, I think he calls them like the 4Ds. And you need to be like 80% doing, it's like 80% doing, 8% delegating, and I feel like I've lost a D here, but like 2%, I think he calls it dreaming.
Yeah.
I have somehow lost an entire category. Oh, deciding. It was like
Yeah.
8% deciding, some percent delegating, some percent dreaming, which is like working on the business instead of in the business.
Yep. And then so much doing. Yeah. No, that sounds about right. The problem is that right now it's just me and one other person, and so that delegating task is pretty challenging because it's just me and
Yeah.
him. For you, it's probably even worse. It's like I'm going to delegate this to myself.
Yeah.
See here, let me check my schedule. Okay, I'm responsible for that. So
Yeah. Well, you say that, but like, I have my buddy Scott DeRuby, who I send graphic design stuff to. I have Adam C, who I send product photography to.
well, I guess that's
I
true.
I just sent a message the other day to a guy I used to work with at Chick-fil-A who does video editing. And actually, my buddy Scott may do some of that for me too. So like, as a solo business, like I almost said business owner, but like no, I am the business.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can still delegate by sending it off to freelancers and contractors.
That's a good point. Because we definitely have done that as well. Design stuff is not our specialty. So anything graphically related or photography or quite frankly, even video sometimes, like it's not something that we're particularly good at. So,
Speaking of which, do you have any time in your schedule to do a like 3D model design kind of project?
maybe.
Okay, we'll talk offline.
Okay. You might have to
There's something that
elaborate.
I have been not able to get to forever.
Okay. I mean,
So
yeah. I mean, I do some design stuff for all the time. I got this one guy from Florida that I've been doing some design work for, and it's been dragging out a little bit longer than I had planned. But I'm hoping that we're getting towards the end of it, so that'll hopefully free me up for some more design work. And then um, there was a guy, and I cannot remember. He does Titan rings or titanium rings
oh,
is what he does.
okay.
But Titan rings is that?
I think so.
I talked to him a while ago on the phone for an hour or two. Super nice guy. Had an awesome conversation with him. Um, and he made this little fidget thing that like it's these circles that interconnect and you can twist them and it's like they're constantly twisting in on themselves, but you can just do it
Interesting.
forever.
Yeah.
And so I asked him about it, and I'm totally stealing that design and I'm going to use it in the class I'm teaching at my local university.
Hmm.
Because the nice thing about the design is that you can grow the chain as long as you want. So my plan is he did it with 6 pieces, but I have 8 students, which is an even number.
Okay.
And so I'm going to have them do it. And then my plan is every semester that I teach it, I want them all to do that project and I want that chain to grow over time. And the nice thing about it is it all twists and I want people to sign their names and their years and kind of program all that in and kind of have it grow over time.
Could you give them some sort of ability to customize their segment,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I
with an
think I could.
engraving or
Mhm.
whatever, a texture, something like that?
I think I want them to have their name and their year for sure, and maybe even like the school logo on one side, like their name, school logo, and year, like something kind of formal on one side, and then the other side, I want them to have free reign to put whatever they want on it within reason.
Okay.
And that way they can have their expression on one side and then kind of like their credentials on the other. And that way it's kind of a something that's kind of his kind of maintains the history of the students who have actually taken the class and can grow over time. So
okay,
that's what I'm thinking. And then I can have my name in there, and it'll be on the chain or off the chain depending on if it was an odd or even year, kind of a
okay.
deal. So,
oh, do you have to have an even number of them?
yeah, you do have to have an even number
Interesting.
of them.
Okay.
So, and then it'll be something that they can leave because they have an area in the engineering building at this university for display, like a display case, and I want it to be in there or on the table that people can actually fidget with and see, and they can kind of look at it. So,
Yeah,
they've
that'd
already
be cool.
they actually I actually had some of the professors talk to me at my last class period. I haven't had any of them ever stop by and actually, like, when I teach the class, it's late in the evening, so no other professor is there, only my students.
Yep.
Um,
Because you're the new guy.
because I'm the new guy, and which is okay for me because I'm working during the day, so it's not like I have any free time any other time. Um, but I ran into a couple of the teachers whenever I was finishing up class the other day, and some of the other professors, and they said they've been talking about seeing if I would teach 3 classes next semester instead of the one I'm
Ooh.
teaching this semester. So,
Would you do it?
if I could find the time, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Um, I would love to do it. I have enjoyed teaching. Um, right now I don't really have like a course curriculum. Like, it's all in my brain, and it's I pretty much, the day I show up in class, I go, okay, what are we going to do today? Like, I'm figuring it out on the spot with them. More like I have a grand plan, but I don't have it all detailed out. And I feel like if I'm going to get start teaching that many classes, I need to be a little more proper, and I need to have
Yep.
the time to actually invest a little bit more, because as it is, um, I'm working 7:30 to 4:30. Mondays evenings is the podcast. Tuesday, Thursday evenings is the teaching of the class that I'm currently doing. Wednesday evenings is kind of my free evening that always gets filled up with something work related
Yep.
or personal. And then Friday evenings is family time with my parents and my wife and other family members. And then my weekends, I do a lot with my local church, and they keep me hopping pretty much all Saturday. Sunday's really my only one free day, and it hasn't been free. We have 3 weddings coming up in our church, and next month, so all of my weekends for like at least a month are taken up. So I just don't have a lot of free time unless I start teaching the class from like 9 o'clock to like midnight or something.
Yep. I understand that. I I want to get back and talk about you in a second here, but I think I'm at the point now where I need to break the rest of my ties with my old day job. And like I don't know. It's I don't really want to because it's nice not having to dip money out of savings. Um but like I need that time. And I'm looking at this number of carabiners going up, going, I've got to make like 400 of these things. And I don't even have the fixture designed yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that we'll have to talk about that next time. I have fixturing ideas. Anyway, and so it's like
That sounds like a fun topic.
I just need to get those 3 days a week back, or 2.5 days a week.
My advice in a situation like that would be, you can always invest in yourself. And if you have the financial preparation, which I know you do, to be able to cut it cold turkey and go full time, then I would definitely encourage that, because like that's the whole reason I did what I did was, and you were in a better situation than I was. When I quit, it was one or the other for me. I couldn't do halves. One, company I was working with prior wasn't interested in anything like that. And two, starting a business, just, it sucks every spare second you have. And if you're going to grow it to a point where it's going to sustain you, if you're just have your toes dipped in the water and you're not fully, like, if it's a side hustle, that's one thing. But if you're planning on growing it into a business, like, unless you have a job that you can treat this as a side hustle, and to the point where, and it's kind of what the story you've done. I think you've kind of done this. It was more of a side gig, and then you've kind of grown it to a point where you're ready to make that jump. You're at that stage where you're looking over the edge, and I think it's probably a good time for you to look down and go, okay, I've met all of my requirements and I'm ready to go. But it is a scary thing leaving your employer behind. And the only, the biggest thing is try not to close any door, because you never know what's going to happen later on down the road. Every place I've ever worked, I've always tried to do everything I can when I'm leaving, that I leave in good standing, just because you never know what's going to happen, and who the people you leave behind, what's going to happen with that. Sorry, I went on a little rant.
I'm with you, and it's not like I didn't give them plenty of notice and then work with them part-time for a couple months. I promised them, I think, up until Halloween, though I did not say that I would stay on 3 days a week. I told them that I would slowly taper off to nothing, and so far I'm halfway through and I've done no tapering. So
I think
I'll probably talk
taper.
So maybe like 1 day in the office and 2 days remote for the rest of September, and then 1 day remote, 1 day in the office, or something like that. But yeah, I just need to do that.
You do, like, you need to start pulling back some more. You're starting to get a lot busier, which I'm excited for you. It's a big step. So,
yep.
Yeah. Did I interrupt you? Because you said you were going to ask me something, I think.
Yeah. So when are you going to hire somebody?
Man, that is a tough question. If I knew I was having consistent work, I've had a handful of people that have approached me and asked me if I was hiring. And then the other day I had a student who I was teaching. He goes, "Do you do internships?" And I was like, if I did internships right now, they would be unpaid. And if you're still interested, maybe we can talk. And it sounded like he still might be interested. So my plans going forward are, depending on how our growth goes as a company, if it continues to pick up the pace like it has been in the last month or two, I could foresee us in a year from now maybe having someone, or at the very least at the end of next semester, bringing on an intern or two to kind of go through the trial run of hiring someone without actually having to make that heavy of a commitment. And there's honestly one or two students in my class that if I could find a way to capture them, and after they graduate, I would be very interested in that, because they're the type of individuals that they like machining, they have an interest in it, and they're quite talented. And so I think I could be interested in that. Versus I've always loved the idea of hiring friends of family for the business. It's just finding positions and having, the funds to be able to do something like that. Because right now I'm not even paying myself, so
yeah,
bring anyone else on.
Well, unless they're producing more money, like
true.
You weren't paying yourself when you bought that Haas either, but like you committed to putting out X number of dollars every month, indefinitely.
True.
Well, not indefinitely, never mind. With a very definite contract.
Yes. Yes.
But with the understanding that it would immediately turn around and give you profit.
Yes. Which we had our first 10-figure week a couple months ago, and I think we're getting close to having a second one of those. So, which would be awesome. But it's getting that consistently that's the hardest part because in between those two massive spikes, there has been significantly less per week for that space in between. You know, if we're batting over 1,000, we're doing pretty good for some of those weeks in between. So, but it is what it is. It's the struggles of starting a business. It's feast or famine. We go through phases, but the good news is with all these different revenue streams that we have coming in right now, I think we're going to start seeing at least a baseline that we can count on.
Okay, that's good.
And so that's I think we're getting to the point where we might actually see like a baseline, like, okay, I know we're going to do at least X amount of dollars per week. We might have spikes or maybe a little bit of a drought, but at least a rough average, which I'm getting really excited about. So.
Well, and that's where like the profit first stuff comes in, where you put X% aside for employee comp, and when you have those spikes, you get a little bit more. When you're low, you may have to dip out of that. And
yeah, and we've been working on that. I think we've been buying so much new equipment for the last year that like any drop of extra cash that we've had has pretty much vanished as soon as it appears.
Yeah.
And I think I say this every time we seem to get cash in our pockets that new tools and things show up. But on the flip side, every time we've done that, we've gained more capabilities and we can take on more types of work. So it's definitely a balancing act. Like the rush job that we were just working on today, if we had the Royal Call-Out system in a part puller, I could have easily set that up and let it run a bar, even though it was like a 3-foot bar, that could run for 30 minutes to an hour unattended, and I could just let it run through, and that would free up so much of my time and my other partner's time that we wouldn't need another person if we had that, and that's a lot cheaper than buying an employee. So
I am very much looking forward to running these carabiners in with a pallet set up. I should get at least an hour, maybe 70 minutes of unattended runtime each. And granted, while I have 2 pallets that I haven't machined, but I'll be able to swap those out. So I'll be unloading one. So, I'm getting 60, 50 minutes or so of time in between where I'm just there and the machine is just running. And I'm really looking forward to that time. I feel like that'll be that is for my brain setting me up for productivity.
Yeah. And the advantage of me and having a partner is that there'll be times when we have big lathe jobs where we'll take turns running the machine. And so the times when you're not running the machine, you can get some real work done outside of it. And so we can imagine that just with the addition of we're both free now, not one of us is having to focus on the machine. So those free times that we have are just going to be longer, and it's going to give us opportunities to work on other areas of the business while the machine's running. And I think we actually might have got, on that note slightly, we might have gotten our first repeat work customer for this rush job that we're doing, because I know what the component is, and I know that the reason they're rushing it is because they need 100 of them for an item that they produce, and it's a consumable. So it's something that they're going to use consistently over time. And they told me on the phone the other day that we're their preferred vendor, which I have no idea how that happened, but I am totally down for. And so I'm excited because I don't know how often they go through this component, but if we become their preferred vendor, and it could become our first repeat order from a customer, not overflow from another shop. So I'm excited about that.
I read some book, and I'm kind of just vaguely getting flashes of it in my head right now. But they were talking about it may have been Built to Sell, where they're talking about the value of a business.
Mm-hmm.
And the most valuable type of business that you can have, or the most valuable type of customer, is one where you're selling them consumables.
Yeah.
because they just have to keep coming back to you. And like
Mm-hmm.
the lifetime value of a customer is very high.
Which is why we live in the disposable product age that we live in right
Yes,
now.
it is.
Which is, that's it. There's good sides and bad sides to that for sure.
Yeah.
I remember reading, or I don't know if no, I wasn't reading. I watched a video on the. Have you heard of the light bulb oligarchy?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that whole thing is actually legit in the fact that they've designed light bulbs to only last a certain amount of hours just so they can sell more light bulbs. Like, there's no other reason why they burn out other than, we have the technology that they could last a lot longer than they do. But if they did, then the light bulb companies feel like they would go out, which ironically go out. But, but, so they make them to where they go out sooner. They don't last as long, and that's particularly annoying when you buy like these LED light bulbs and they're supposed to last for like so many hours, but it feels like none of them ever do make it to their claimed rating ever. And that's very frustrating. But I'm sure that's a design feature that they put in there, um, for the for the purpose of having them burn out. And honestly, I think it would be fun to find a light bulb that's an LED light bulb that's burned out and figured out what actually went wrong.
Hmm.
I
It's
think,
always the electronics. It's never the LED itself.
yeah, yeah. So that'd be fun sleuthing to like go in there. Like, I could see it having like an IC timer where like a random value amount
It
of
just
time
pops.
just pop.
Yeah.
Like, that would be an interesting. I wonder if anyone's done that. That would be
Probably.
fun. That'd be fun to look into.
Do
Anyways,
you watch? Do you watch any Mark Rober YouTube videos?
yeah, yeah.
Did you watch his most recent one about arcade games?
I saw it. I haven't watched that one.
Okay. Well, one of the things he mentions is that some arcade games will literally let you program in the percentage chance of somebody winning. So it's like it looks like a game of skill, but then it's like, oh yeah, but also there's only a 0.2% chance of you winning, even if you get it perfect. Like,
So he did an arcade one, um, several years ago where he put a backpack and he put a plunger and he had
yes.
that one that was going in a circle and he had like a little thing that would detect the light and he was within point two, or he was within like 2 milliseconds of when the light would shine to when his plunger was hitting it, and he was hitting on the right or the left. And so like he proved with that like it is not a matter of skill, it is all a matter of luck combined with a little bit of skill. But so
I I'm getting the idea that you're about done. I'm about done.
I'm getting pretty close. We've been going on for almost 2 hours, and I've honestly had like late nights all night for like
Yeah.
4 nights. Even though that sentence
Well, I'm
probably
just
doesn't
gonna
make
throw this
sense.
little I'm gonna throw this little teaser out here before we wrap up.
Oh no.
I found what I think is the coolest fixturing system I have ever seen.
You teased this a little bit at IMTS. I was going to
Yeah.
ask you about that tonight, but we'll save it for
I'll
next
tell
time.
you about it. I'm not going to tell the podcast about it. They'll have to come
Okay.
back next year or next year. Wow. Next episode. I'm tired
Apparently, I'm not
too.
the only one getting tired.
Yeah. IMTS took a lot out of me.
I can understand that.
Also, it's an
So
hour later for me.
that's true. Yeah, I don't know how you stay up this late because I'm getting tired, and it's 9 o'clock here, so that means it's about 10 o'clock there.
Yeah.
So, all right, man.
The
Well,
answer is
huh?
so the answer is just I'm always tired.
You're always yeah. Instead
Yeah.
of always angry, you're always tired. Yeah. No. I think we'll call it. I guess, for all those that have been listening so far, we appreciate you hanging on to us yammer on for almost 2 hours this evening. But thanks for listening in, and we'll talk to you guys next time. This is Harrison with not the design of everything, but with precision ingenuity, and then I'm with AJ here with design the everything. And guess we're signing out.
Bye. You should have stopped while you were ahead.
I know. I